Hey, what's going on, you guys? In this video, I want to cover a super fun and logical way to approach using the keyboards as a music producer. And I think this is a really useful topic because a lot of music producers would rather focus on making music, right, in their DAW, and making beats and songs on the computer rather than using the Midi keyboard that they might have in their studio. And that's, I think, largely because the piano is a really intimidating instrument. If you haven't taken piano lessons, it might feel like an insurmountable task to actually get better at the piano and use it more in your music creation process, right? But the approach is everything. So if you have the right approach and you make it a musical approach, practice and composition are almost really the same things. And you're going to see what I mean by that in a second. So I have a cool little synth sound. I've got a cool pop drum loop in the background. And basically, I'm just going to start with a triad. Most people might know already what this is, but if you don't, you have to be here. This is the place to start. And then understanding that we can take the bottommost note and move it up. And now we essentially have the same chord, but just a different order of notes. So you would refer to this as an inversion because that root note is no longer the bottommost note. And we have the same thing right here. So G, C, and E, and then we're back to the beginning. So you have technically three variations. The first one, this right here, and this right here. And then you're back to the beginning. So you should be able to do that with one hand. For a lot of beginners, that's enough practice already, especially being able to go down. You could just start with that and in a few minutes get that down. Most people can get that down, especially in the key of C major, which uses all white keys unless there's an accidental somewhere in there or a modulation. So it's really simple to get started with this. Okay, where does that lead us to? How do we make it musical? Well, what you want to do is then apply this idea to a chord progression. So a chord progression could just take these same three notes and just jump up to perhaps these chords. Right here I'm playing C major to F major to A minor to F major. So that would be called a 1-4-6-4 in the number system, which is good to know. And I'll put a link down below to my lesson on the number system if you want to check that out. But a lot of people get to this point, they're just jumping, around the keyboard, and you have to keep looking at your hands for the most part to be able to do that. What you want to be able to do is play the chord progression using what we just talked about, the inversions. So if I want to go to the F chord, yes, I could jump up here, or I could take that C, bring it down here, and now the chord movement from the 1 chord to the 4 chord is much, much easier. And even more so, if I was jumping to the A minor chord, let's take these two notes and voice them down here. And now that chord progression, the 1-4-6-4 chord progression, goes like this. There's our A minor. Right? Now, again, let me stop right here and say, as a music producer, this might be like life-changing for a lot of people because now you could play a chord progression into your songs using a synth or a pad or something, and you're already like off to the races. The next spot is the melody. So how you make this sound even more musical is being able to add melody. And up to this point, I've only been using my left hand, right? So how do we add melody to this, especially in a logical way that's fun to play and doesn't even feel like practice? Well, what we can do is take that same chord and play it with the right hand. Now with the right hand, what I'm going to do is slightly different. I'm going to play the chord first without thinking about anything. And then I'm going to play the notes that are inside the whole thing. So if you're playing this with your thumb, your middle, and your pinky, you might also have these two notes with the index and the ring ready to go. So I'll play the chord and play the line. This is not a scale, it's just a line of, I call it a line of notes. I do this on guitar as well, because I've been playing guitar for 23 years, and this is what I do is I play a chord on the guitar and then I play a line through it. And that's really useful, especially for more complicated forms of music like jazz. So what I do is I play the line. Now I'll play the line coming down and back to the chord. Again, this might seem really simple and dumb, but if you just follow with me, you'll find that this is a really logical way to make music. Now we come back to our chord progression, right? I'm just going my own pace. I'm not going to turn on the drums just yet. But what I'm going to do now is look at my right hand, which is still resting on that chord, right? And as I play the chord progression, I'm going to start trying out different notes on the right hand from that chord. So what was I doing? I was still just playing the chords in the left hand. My right hand was not moving at all, but I'm just playing melodies now. And the more you do that, it's very simple. You're not letting your right hand wander around the keyboard and getting lost. Keep yourself limited to one spot. You're going to start to learn what notes also function really well in melody awareness. I call it melody awareness. A lot of people refer to it as just being very intuitive about writing your melodies and resolving them in a way that's pleasing. Melody and chords always work together in context. So now you're using inversions, you're playing chord progressions in a very usable way, and you're adding melodies and improvising them even, and really learning what target notes work well with the chords that you're playing. And if you can add in that final step of, using the drums, it's going to sound like you're coming up with a completely unique idea for a track, just using some very simple approaches to practicing the piano. So here's our chord progression, right? Now let's let our right hand play with it. So you notice how immediately you have sort of like a pop melody that we're coming up with. So this is a really musical way to practice. You might come up with song ideas immediately doing this. I've seen students do that in my lessons. They come up with about 4 or 5 melodies that they really, really like. And it happens very quickly. And then it's very logical to take this approach and just do it in other spots. So you don't even have to move your left hand. You can keep your left hand kind of rocking here. The more you do this, by the way, the more automatic it will feel in your brain. So you're not even thinking about it. And then with your right hand, let's just take another spot with that inversion. So here's the inversion of the C chord, right? Once you move your right hand up, you might have a different fingering. For instance, I have my thumb, index, pinky, or sometimes ring, but it kind of lends me to be using this line. So when you play the chords, your melody is going to kind of feel different because you're in a different spot. It's a different line of notes inherently that you're using. Your fingers are in a different spot. And, I'm not a genius, you guys. It's a simple way to improvise and explore melodic options as a music producer. And you can do the same thing. You can go from this inversion, you can go up here, and you get these beautiful that line of notes will sound differently as well, right? So it's really, really fun to do, and you can take this even further from there and try a lot of other options out. But I hope you find this video useful and consider using it if you're trying to use your MIDI keyboards more as a music producer and they're just sitting there in your studio gathering dust. Don't think of the piano as something that is impossible to learn or use in your music creation. It's actually, in my opinion, the most important instrument in your studio. So I hope you found this video useful. If you want to download some useful stuff, there's links below you can grab. And yeah, have fun making music.